session agenda for the June 16th here in the brand new building. We're going to start with public comment on all items. We do have public comment on items 1, 2, and 3 on the agenda, but if you need to go or you want to do it right now, you can talk about basically anything you want. So if you want to come before the city council, come to the podium, give us your name and address, keep your comments to 3 minutes. So would anyone like to speak? Please stand up, come forward. Go ahead. Give us your name and address.
Hello. My name's Chris Glenn. I live at 209 Yellowstone Avenue in Billings. Hello, everybody. And I am here to speak about the Northwestern Energy rate hike. I know the city's facing a lot of budget problems with, the $9 million with the laws that were passed by the legislature. So it's a big struggle. It's a big struggle for the city. And now with the rate hike, adding another $1 million is what I heard at the park board meeting, that's the estimate. And I am here. I support business. I believe Northwestern Energy needs to be healthy and to be charging a fair price, but I think they're overboard and trying to pass on risk and cost to those of us who are paying electrical bills, including the city of Billings, rather so that they're making lots of profits. That I don't think that's right way to do business. And so I'm asking the city, please, will you take a position on the rate hike and tell the PSC that you recommend it not be approved for Northwestern Energy, that they need to do a balance, support Northwestern and the customers. And that is it. And I guess I'm representing Yellowstone Valley Citizens Council as well as myself. I'm happy I have solar because it protects me a little bit. And the solar bill that we were trying to get across just got vetoed by Gianforte, which is frustrating that we're trying to make it more affordable in Montana and we're being stopped. So thank you for listening. Thank you for serving. Thank you for coming here every Monday night. That's a hard thing. So
thank you very much. Next, please give your name and address.
Hi, I'm Katie Harrison. I live on the south side in Billings. And I'm also here to speak on the Northwestern Energy rate case. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself and then also my organization, Sustaina Billings, as well. So I do represent a good number of folks here in Billings and actually across the state. The fact that we are dealing with this rate hike case, less than 2 years after a 28% rate hike that got somehow pushed through, feels kind of like a nightmare deja vu. That I don't know the exact math, but I guess that would be like close to or 50%, 53%, something like that in about 2 years. And I guess my question is, what has Northwestern Energy had to show for this? I know the last time around they were really wanting to invest in nuclear and, of course, continue operations at Colstrip and push through this plant right on the Yellowstone River in Laurel, despite every citizen felt like in Laurel speaking out against it, and their city council did not listen to them. Instead, they were trying to, I guess, get the zoning changed to allow for this plant to happen. So it all seems shady and frustrating, and I feel like Northwestern Energy should be paying fines right now for beginning to build a plant without permission, without permits, and without public input, not forcing us essentially to raise our rates again when we are held hostage by this monopoly. So I really hope you all will speak on our behalf and plead with the PSC to not do this to its citizens. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? This is your time to speak. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and go to item number 1. Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Let's see, who's going to speak tonight? Elsie?
Yes, so my name is Elise Monat. I'm the transportation planner. I think most of you know me already. I'm really just here to introduce two of our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee members. So we've got Dave Kopic, who was appointed to BPAC for short by the Planning Board, and then Christy Halderman, who was appointed by the City Council. This is kind of an interesting board because it's both a city and a county board. So they're appointees from both the city, the county, and the planning board. And with that, I think I'll just let them take it over. I don't want to bore you too much because they've got the fun information or interesting anyway. And you just kind of have to hold this really close to your mouth, it seems like, to get it to pick up. So.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Dave Kopic, and we're going to go briefly through this Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. It's a volunteer group. Who we are, what we do. We were looking at some crash data along the way, user counts on the trails, and recommendations, and then we'll take any questions. Who we are, we're a group of volunteers. We serve a 3-year term. I'm the chair with the planning board, representing the planning board. Our vice chair is Jason Wood, representing the county. Stephanie Donovan, city, and Christy Halderman here is city, and Anna O'Donnell is also with city. Currently, there are 2 vacant county seats, so we're trying to get those filled as soon as we can. Did I go the right way? There we go. What we do, our focus is to ensure that our community's infrastructure, move that a little, enables people to walk, bike, and use wheelchairs safely. We do this by advising the city and county staff and elected officials regarding non-motorized transportation issues, ensuring advice is rooted in community need by soliciting and compiling public comment and crash data to discover trends and suggest solutions. We collaborate with decision makers to identify, assess, and take action on critical community needs, using national standards, best practices, and the most recent adopted Billings Area Bikeway and Trails Master Plan as guidance. What we've found that the community input, what the community loves is the 2024 public input showed residents prefer separated from roadways, dedicated bike lanes, well-lit areas, wayfinding ease, maintenance of trails, paths, and scenic views. We advise elected officials to protect and maintain the successful facilities, scenic routes, and protected routes. Some of the community concerns, lack of protection from traffic. We have high speeds, reckless drivers, a lack of traffic separation that can contribute to low comfort in our community's existing routes and discourages use. Unsafe sidewalks is another issue. Numerous missing crosswalks, residents asking for enhanced safety measures, and numerous vehicles turning and hitting pedestrians in crosswalks. We have network gaps, which is a lack of connectivity due to missing sidewalks and bike routes. There's still a concern for residents. We advise the governing bodies to first address the lack of traffic separation and unsafe crosswalks in areas with the highest vehicle traffic and most frequented by pedestrians and bicycles. I'll go back a little bit. One thing we worked on last year was we noticed that when the new trail went in along the rims, the Skyline Trail, that it cut across entrances to the subdivisions up there, and the stop signs happened to be on the other side of the trail, so traffic coming out of the subdivisions would cross the trail where there wasn't a trail before. So they're used to driving out, clear out to the stop sign, right up to the highway. And our committee noticed that, and then shortly after, a group from the neighborhood association up there approached us and came to our meeting and told us their concerns. And so we looked at maybe moving the stop signs back so that the cars coming out would have to stop first and then proceed. We had a lease check with engineering to see if that was possible. And I believe in a couple places it was. And also we advised the engineers to look at maybe putting in some rumble strips for the cyclists up there to warn of approaching entrances. A lot of them are just blind entrances there. There's some rocks and landscaping there, and the cars just come out. And you can't, if you're going 25 miles an hour, probably shouldn't on the trail, but 25 miles an hour on a bike, it's pretty hard to see traffic coming out. And the neighbors were rightly concerned about that. So that's one thing we looked at and took that input. So crash data. I'll turn this over to Christy.
I'm Christy. Thanks again for having us. I joined the committee earlier this year, and one of the most interesting things that I've found about being involved in this group is reviewing this crash data. So you're only going to see 2 full complete years because we started later in 2022, and obviously 2025 is not over yet. So as we continue compiling that data, you'll have a more full picture, and we can notice any sort of trends if they coincide to kind of what we're already working with and what we review. But I find this interesting because it really shows how the city is moving, how people are interacting, if they're in a car, if they're on a bike, if they are walking, how people are really interacting with each other, and if there's any sort of patterns that we can maybe hopefully prevent in the future by reviewing this information. We get the data from the police department, who then gives it to the planning department, compiles it for our group, and then we'll review them in our meetings. So we're looking at different types of data points, such as time of day, date, day of the week. They'll take notes, and really what we break down as a group is we pull up we'll pull up the location on a Google map, and we'll do the Google view, and we really try to recreate the incident so that we can visualize what happened, why it happened, and really who was responsible for that. So for example, one of the things we've noticed, we started looking at time of day because we were trying to decipher if the accident happened, if it was at night, is there poor lighting there, or was somebody jaywalking somewhere and the driver could not see them? Could a street light help that out? Also, if it's during the school year, during the school week, we have noticed that there are intersections close to schools that they're during when school begins or lets out. So more than likely there is a student involved, and that's really important that we're protecting those kids in those areas so that they can commute to school. One thing that we're working on is that we hope to have one of the officers come to one of our meetings to kind of ask questions and see if we can if we can see if there's any way that we can work better together to figure out how, because we're noticing an uptick in hit and runs essentially. So we'd like to see if there's anything that we can provide and work together in preventing those things from happening. These are some of the, well, this is a heat map, but we have been plotting, or I should say planning has been plotting these crashes on different types of maps. And so this is what it looks like. As you can see, the density of the downtown area, there's more population, there's more people that are there, more cars, more folks. There's more crashes on Main Street, if you notice. One thing that we were talking about in a previous meeting is how the West End, you're not noticing as many crashes. It could be due to infrastructure. It could be due to more bike lanes, to more trails. It could also be because maybe there's not as many people commuting there. That's why we're trying to compile more data so that we can get a full and accurate picture so that we can make decisions moving forward. We separate bikes from pedestrians. This is all of them, right, Elise? Yeah. So this is all of them for the frequency. And then we broke it down so you can see pedestrians versus cyclists. Kind of similar patterns if you kind of, I don't want to go back and forth here, but if you see the density again of the downtown area, you're going to notice more crashes there, probably just because of the law numbers and there's more people there. One of the bits of information that we also receive, and this is why it would be good to work with the police department on this. So you see the possible injury that is reported. If you're noticing an uptick in hit and runs, for example, are we pursuing those people because there was a hit and run, or if there was no injury that was reported, are we just kind of letting that go? So we're trying to work those things out. But as you can see, just between 2.5 years of data, we've had 5 fatalities, and that's not good. So we are trying to collect all of that data so that we can make the city a safer place. These, if you have not seen them before, we do have bike lane counts. This is a 2-year moving average. It's 2-year moving average because there's obviously more activity due to our climate in Billings. There's more activity in the summertime, so we're trying to average those out to show more accurate numbers. In the yellow, these are all of the different types of activity on a daily average for the bike lanes. And then there are also trail counts, and this is a 3-year, right? Yeah, this is a 3-year rolling average. So this is daily use per a 3-year moving average. So I want to say that was the last slide. If you have any questions, or if you want me to go back to any, if you want to look at them more closely, we're happy to answer anything. But really, we're here for you to try to help.
Just one question. Would you be able to send these slides to the council? Okay.
I'll say it for the people online. Yes, and I believe Laura Maddox, my supervisor, sent them out this morning. So you should have them in your email, and it should be available to the public as well on those council emails tomorrow. So
Thank you. So let's start. Anybody has questions? Councilmember Kennedy.
As we're talking about bike trails, there's a lot of electric bikes. And I've noticed a lot of users with electric bikes are not staying on the bike path in the roadway. They're driving the sidewalks and in the areas, even though there are designated areas. What do we do about that?
Okay. Yeah, we brought that up at a few of our meetings, and maybe we've all noticed that there's some misuse of electric bikes out there, and they'll go 25. They'll go the speed of a car, and there are people on the sidewalks, and I've seen small kids zooming down through traffic, and short of maybe law enforcement, we were hoping to maybe educate the public through the bike shops, and maybe they could give some information to buyers of the electric bikes, especially the younger people. So, but it is a problem, and even on the bike trails, it is dangerous, and we've had people that you kind of get buzzed by an e-bike as you're walking down the multiple use path. So,
Any other questions? Anyone? Council? Okay. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Real quick on the crash data you had there, was that only crash data involving vehicles? Was that pedestrian and bicycles? Was that just bicycles? I mean, what is that? Or just anyone involving a bike, whether it's their own bike, and give it, because there's a little bit of, not knowing what these crash data is,
yeah, thank you, Councilmember Neese. Yes, so we just asked the police department to send us anything involving anyone walking or biking. So whether that be a single, I don't know that we've really seen any, but it should pick up on any like single bike crashes, or things like that. But it should be everything, all ped bike related.
You're gonna look and start identifying some of that stuff, because I have looked into this before, and there are several single collision bicycle wrecks or two bikes, running into each other, things like that are not anything to do with vehicles, vehicle or bicycles and pedestrians as well. And so when we say the crash data, I think people assume it's vehicle and bicycle and vehicle and pedestrian, but I don't think it's not always that way.
At least what I've seen or reviewed, personally, I don't know how often there's reporting, for example, of a bike collision or maybe a pedestrian, but most of the ones that I've seen, they do involve vehicles, I would say, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there are some in vehicles, but there's also a lot of just bicycle and
The
bicycle. bicycle,
reports we get are they're all vehicles versus pedestrians and cyclists. And they're reports from parking lots on private property where someone's backed into a pedestrian,
Right.
or someone has made a right turn in front of a pedestrian in a crosswalk, or a pedestrian was running across the street at night. But we get a brief explanation on each incident, and along with the time and of course the location.
If I could just add something to that. I honestly don't remember any that have been like single bike crashes, but there have definitely been ones that we've seen where it has been either the person biking or the person walking at fault. I wouldn't say it's the majority of them, but it does happen. So I think BPAC is really conscious about realizing there's some education that can maybe be done on both sides.
Any other questions? Council Member Owen.
Thank you. Elise, I'm looking here in the presentation slide that is the bike lanes. And I noticed we don't have on here the places where you striped in sharrows. What's BPAC's thinking on that at this point? Are we dispensing with sharrows? Are they not the preferred option? Like, where are we on that particular tool?
I think they have some use, particularly like in our neighborhood bikeways that are on local streets where you've got kind of low volumes of traffic. Cars aren't going very quickly. Then those shares are being used mainly to mark the route, essentially to say like, hey, you're going to see people biking here. They're not necessarily the most effective for really busy streets. So like, if somebody was like, let's put sharrows on Main Street, I'd probably be like, I don't know that that's the most effective solution. So they have kind of a limited, effectiveness. And there are some downtown. I mean, I feel like on 30th, right now. So I feel like that's probably kind of at the high end of where you might want them. But yeah, the busier streets, I don't think they're super effective, because we are trying to appeal to people of all ages and abilities where, you want to take your kid out riding, and that doesn't necessarily feel comfortable for families and things like that.
Yeah, probably, or cars either. Okay, thanks.
Council Member Gulick.
I could just add to that conversation, and yeah, North 30th and between 4th and 6th is where we have, well, on North 30th, well into downtown is where we have sharrows. And even as a rider who's comfortable riding in traffic and can ride faster than a lot of people, it's still it's uncomfortable, and it because it's actually a social pressure. It's like, I don't want to slow anyone down, right? And so I go off to the side, but then that's not a really safe place when there's cars parked there as well. So, and that's why we're looking forward to having the cycle track and the buffered bike lanes downtown. And the real test is not whether someone like me can ride downtown. It's whether or not if I have kids, if they can go downtown, or my parents, or something like that, who should be able to access downtown as well. So certainly literature is moving away from sharrows on routes, even 25-mile-an-hour routes, if there's higher volume of traffic.
Any other questions? Councilmember Aspenleiter.
The only thing I'd ask you to consider, and I was down in San Diego last fall and caught a news story. San Diego has a myriad of separated bike lanes, but San Diego is also taking them out because they can't maintain them, and because those separated bike lanes are concrete barriered on the side of the street. And all of that stormwater is washing all of that trash debris and the inability to clean that section into their storm system, which is causing them permit problems for discharge. So as we start talking, if we are ever going to talk about separated bike lanes, we need to take that into consideration. I mean, cities are already starting to remove those things because they can't maintain them. And the last thing we need to be doing is adding stuff that we're going to, in 10 years, take out because it's causing us problems with our stormwater MS4 permit. And that will happen to us also. I mean, we need to be looking at the flip side of this also. And that is a serious thing to keep an eye on and be considerate of.
Any other questions before we go to public comment? Okay, I don't see any. So public comment, this is the time for the public to come forward if they wish to speak about item number 1. Come to the podium, give us your name and address. Keep your comments to 3 minutes. Yes, sir.
I'm Mark Nicholson, live at 27 Clark. Took a big interest in this, and I looked up some information from the National Traffic.
Can you speak up a little closer?
National Traffic Safety Council, yeah. And what I discovered in 2019, 2020, 2021 was that there were 27 motor vehicle accident deaths in the Billings area. They tend to be on roads with wide lanes and multiple lanes where people go fast. Does anybody notice that people go faster than the speed limit? Is that, anyway, people travel at speeds where as the roadway suggests rather than what the speed limit sign is. So what we're doing is we're building wide roads that cause people to go faster, and we're killing motorists. Interesting enough, during those 3 years, there were no bicycle deaths. But then I thought maybe that's because no one would be caught dead on a bicycle in Billings. But anyway, I think that we need to look at how we're doing our roadways, and we need to do some things to slow people down because it's speed that's killing people. And one way to do that is to put bicycle infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure. These wide, fast roads are scaring bicyclists and pedestrians off. And so I think we need to take a bigger view. But I think the motor vehicle deaths are part of this problem. And I don't think that the cost of doing business in Billings should include 9 fatalities a year.
Thank you. Anyone else? This is your opportunity to speak on item number 1.
Hi, I'm back. Chris Glenn, 209 Yellowstone Avenue. I just want to say I was in another town for a conference and I knew parking was going to be tight. So I took my bike, just hoping that it would be easy to get there. It was a college town and it was. They had bike lanes. They weren't separated, but it was on kind of slow streets, kind of think Lewis Avenue. And it was fabulous. There were so many people riding their bikes to and from this big conference center. And I wished the Billings was like that. I'm really looking forward to the new separated bike trails that are coming. And I agree with Mark Nicholson about when you make the roads big, the people go as fast as you can. That's just human nature. I do that. I speed. I shouldn't. But so I really I'm looking for more bike trails because I think it's healthier for us and it will draw people to Billings. We need more employees and they are looking for those kinds of things. like in that other town I was in. We want people to want to come to Billings. So just sharing that, and thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on item number 1? Anybody else? I don't see anybody. We'll close the public comment. Any more conversations before we go to item number 2 here? Thank you, group. Thank you very much. Come back again. So Laura, you're up tonight.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Council, for having me tonight to start this discussion on the development of the Billings MPO Unified Planning Work Program. This is something we do annually, and to address kind of some of the concerns on what the MPO is working on for planning studies, so we don't have issues when we come to the council for looking at contracts or looking at plans to approve. We want to make sure that we're meeting council goals and your initiatives and desires for the community moving forward with the Billings MPO and the funding that we not give. I wish we could give that much money. Okay. So just a little bit of background here before we get into potential projects and discussions with the council on your goals and priorities. We were notified of our PL allocation this year in April. And what I do with those funding, once we know what our PL allotment is going to be, we use PL dollars to fund the planning division, staff and operations, as well as completing transportation planning documents for the MPO. So the first thing I do is make a review of our staffing needs, our indirect costs, and those types of things, and allocate that to the different work elements that we will address as we move forward with this presentation. So once I do that, I worked on that in April and May just to figure out what kind of transportation planning dollars we would have for projects. We started reaching out to county public works, city public works to talk about what the MPO could provide for transportation planning elements for our community. We had met with county public works staff, and we've met with the county commissioners twice. At this time, they are not moving forward with any recommended projects this year. We did talk to them a little bit about some MPO projects that we would like to pursue beyond the city council goals and initiatives to move our community forward and to help us with some projects that will be coming up in a couple years. We'll continue with outreach in June with the city council and county commissioners to develop that draft work plan. And then we'll start the review of that document in June and July. We are required to have a draft UPWP to MDT by August 1st. So it's with the way our transportation planning process works with going to planning board, city council, and board of county commissioners, it can be kind of a tight schedule for us to make sure that we're getting all that met before that August 1st deadline. So this is going to be primarily talking about the highway side of things through FHWA, which is our side of the program. And then Rusty is here for Met Transit. They also, they are included in our UPWP for transit activities. Funds are passed through MDT that come to the MPO, and we ask for those are reimbursable through each quarter of our year. Our year runs on the federal year, so it's from October 1st to September 30th. So the funding summary for this year for our PL, our allocation for this year was just under 1.4 million. And again, this is only the highway side, not the transit side. When we were looking at our budgeting for our office, our indirect costs and our direct costs and our projects for that, you see the budget number came in at $1.271 million. We matched those funds, which we're required to do at a certain percentage, which is later on in this presentation. And those funds come from the planning budget. So those are included in our county mill levy that we receive, as well as our application and fees that we generate through our processes and applications. Any unprogrammed funds that we do not expend get rolled over in 2 years to our PL funding. So we don't lose any allocation, they get rolled over every 2 years. The unprogrammed funds that we are showing this year, and this is after the MPO projects that we are proposing. This is not saying that you guys have to support those, but just wanted to give you an outline of what the MPO proposes, and what remaining funding we have left is around $322,000. This is the percentage breakdown that I mentioned per each of our work element. These work elements cover everything from administration, moves into our zoning and subdivision administration, and then as you know, go down to about the middle where it is in the 300s. Those are our transportation planning elements. So it includes transportation system data, which includes things like our traffic counters. We're required to provide counts to MDT yearly. And so we have to make sure that our equipment is up to speed. We have a traffic tech that conducts those. You probably see them in the summer out the traffic counters with the tubes across the roads and those things. Those are required as part of MDT. Though that is a 100% funded activity under our elements. 301 is related to our transportation plan, our long-range transportation plan. So any maintenance or projects we do from there that we need to do, that is also 100% covered by the PL funds. And then 302 is our planning studies. So those are those, like the 21st Street underpass that we're looking at right now is a planning study under 302. That is 60% funded through PL and 40% local. And then we have some elements work that we do in the TIP and environmental, and then element 700 is our program funds. So this is the breakdown of funding per element based on this year's PL allocation. It is broken down through what is covered by PL and what is covered by local funds. Our total budget for this year based on these allocations is just a little over 2.5 million. And you can see the breakdown of the local match through the mill, the county, city, the fees generated through our processes for that total project for a little over 2.5 million. So as I mentioned, the MPO is presenting some projects that the MPO would like to complete for various projects moving forward. The first one is under element 300. This is the element that is 100% PL funded. The first one is the traffic and trail counter upgrade and replacement as needed that I mentioned that we're required to do for MDT. We do want to support the City of Billings, the Public Works project for the transportation corridor analysis. We have a travel demand model that can be operated through a consultant. We don't have the staffing to do it in-house, but we have a consultant that we are providing some funding so that as they go through the analysis and they need to vet a certain corridor, if they want to see the impacts on surrounding transportation systems, we have funding to help do that. The third one here, which is the most high-priced one here, is an update to the 2017 Household Travel Survey. This Household Travel Survey we completed in 2017 was a statistically valid survey that really informed and developed our travel demand model to look at transportation systems. It's been since 2017 since we've done that. And it was really kind of cool. It was very new for us and the state to do this type of survey. It was all done through cell phones. We had people that were solicited through the survey process, and they would calculate and tell us, I'm going from home and I'm doing a work trip, or I'm doing a school trip, or I'm going shopping. This is the route I take, or I take the bus and this is the bus route I take. And then we are also able to provide open-ended survey questions that the city and the county wanted to ask specifically on transportation systems. We asked questions about the Met Transit. We asked questions about roadways and corridors. So it was a really good way to get a lot of public input through a statistically valid survey through this type of work. And when I talked to MDT about, this is what we're thinking about doing. What are you hearing for prices out there for this type of work? It is pretty intense project when you're talking about a household travel survey for And the first time we did it county-wide because we have so many people that commute in from the county. So we wanted to make sure that we captured as much good information as we could about how people are traveling on our roadways. And then the other two projects that we're proposing is under element 302. These are our planning studies. So again, that's 60% funded through PL, 40% funded locally. And the reason that we chose these are projects that are already approved in our capital improvements program. And a lot of times when we get notified of transportation alternative funding availability or other grant opportunities through Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, information like this is vital to putting together an application to submit in a timely manner. So by doing these two small studies to look at whether or not, for instance, the Alkali Creek Trail connection, into looking at where that potential trail could go behind there. And I have some maps here that show all these projects so you can see them. That is very beneficial when we're trying to look into design and preliminary planning work and preliminary cost estimates, which is really beneficial. The other one that we're talking about is the downtown connector to Billings Heights. This one would be continued down, and I have a map for that too, kind of Lillian Avenue down, and there's the new underpass under I-90 that MDT redeveloped. It's a lot wider. There's a roadway. There's been talk about easement access for vehicles to use that for maintenance. It also makes a great connection to get to the Jim Dutcher Kiwanis Trail to make a connection up to the Billings Heights on that side of the tracks. So this is, just wanted to give you kind of some visuals of where we're talking about with these. This is the Alkali Creek one, as you can see, and I forgot the pointer is that the pointer? Anyways, you can kind of see where, this is where the Main Street underpass occurs, and we have the sidewalk that comes around and then comes up along Main Street and then turns up kind of the sword lanes that heads over west. The ultimate goal from the 2017 Bike and Trails Master Plan was always to actually make that direct connection right from the underpass over to the Aronson connection. So, because it's Boulevard Walk right now up through there, and when you get off of the multi-use path, it's a more narrow sidewalk. So looking at that connection. Thank you. Step button. Thank you. Thanks, Rusty. So that is that one. This is the downtown, the Billings, the downtown to the Billings Heights connection. And I'm going to let Elise talk about this. She knows more about that area. It's kind of an interesting area. There's some potential ownership change to the county for part of that. Like I said, that it's been MDT redeveloped that underneath with the improvements to I-90. And I'll let Elise talk a little bit more about that one.
Sure. Thanks, Sal. Yes, so this would be, as Laura mentioned, a connection into the existing trail system, into the Jim Dutcher Trail. Right now, I feel like this is a pretty important connection because it's a fairly short connection, so should be, knock on wood, relatively inexpensive, but it really helps get people to the Jim Dutcher Trail and get them up to the heights. From, if you were to get on this trail, you can go all the way up to Mary Street. You can go over to the Skyline Trail. There's a lot of different transportation connections. And until we, obviously we're building the Stagecoach Trail, but that's a little bit further west to get people up to the heights. So this will kind of get people kind of into the center of the heights and that commercial area there. Right now, the only alternative to reach this without a car is driving or walking or biking on 27th. Then that's not very fun for anybody going back to, like, you want your family with kids or you want your senior citizen parents to be able to use it. So the goal is to provide a more comfortable connection to this one.
Thanks, Elise. And again, the reason that we chose these is because they are in the approved CIP for future funding, and it just provides that feasibility study to look at are we going to need to obtain easements? What is a preliminary layout or location that this could occur? It just helps give us that information so that we're ready if we want to apply for a grant application. So beyond what the MPO is proposing, we wanted to reach out to City Council in addition, because we do have, there is funding there. However, which way the council would like to direct staff to go. there's a minimum of $322,000 available for transportation planning studies. If you took out some of the other projects, there would be additional funding. So what we decided to do to try to do some outreach with the council is on June 11th, we met with the Legislative and Local Affairs Committee, which in attendance was Deputy Mayor Boyette, Councilwoman Rogers, and Councilmember Neese was in attendance. And I thought it was a good discussion. It was a good way for us to have an open discussion about moving forward with projects and stuff. And so it really was to start that dialogue. It was an opportunity to share information about the process as well as transportation planning goals and that are important to the city, and to see how the MPO can assist with those. Discussions we focused on, again, that we're trying to align with council goals, with the CIP, other approved plans and studies that have projects identified that need additional work, and our long-range transportation plans. Some of the things we talked about were, obviously, we talked about corridor studies, we talked about safe routes to school, and we talked about multimodal access. And that meeting really will help shape moving our transportation planning projects forward. And we want to make sure that we're trying to collaborate as much as we can with City Council to make sure that, you know, we're doing the work that you want us to do. So these are some of the projects that came out of discussion with that group. Working with engineering and talking to them about the Safe Routes to School projects. We have a lot of Safe Routes to School projects in our plans, and there are several that need additional work that include evaluation and public input, because some involves parking changes or other things that could affect the adjacent neighborhood. So those are things that planning is very comfortable do as far as doing public outreach and talking to neighbors and residents about proposed changes that could be included in any Safe Routes to School projects. We suggested looking at through the plan, through the priority list. These are the ones that came up, and the Legislative and Local Affairs Committee suggested that we pick 2 out of that, maybe the 2 highest priorities. And the 2 that came out of that was actually St. Francis and Poly Drive. Poly Drive was actually like number 4 on this list, but with the St. Francis project, we're going to be able to address both of those schools under the study. And the other one was Medicine Crow. Another project that arose, this was from Councilmember Neese, was, and I have maps of these 2 in here, is a non-motorized trail from Aronson Avenue to Annandale. And when we look at that map, you'll see that we have city parkland that runs from Aronson up towards the state land. And then in our 2017 Bike and Trails Master Plan, which we're operating under, shows that connection all the way up to Annandale. And not only does that help with Safe Routes to School, through other areas out there with Castle Rock and the elementary school down on Constitution, and that it is a way to move people through neighborhoods by being off the street. So this is the St. Francis Catholic School in Poly Drive, and Mac and Elise are here if you guys have any questions on this. Again, this is to look at the different phases and to do that public outreach, because there are some recommendations that came out of these projects that could affect parking with like a buffered bike lane or a protected bike lane that could have the buffered bike lane, parking, and then the roadway. So it would be quite a change, and we want to make sure that if something out of those recommendations are going to affect the neighborhood, we talk to them specifically and do a little bit more analysis on those types of projects. And this is the Medicine Crow Middle School one. This is looking at trying to get students on the west side of Main Street across there over to get to Medicine Crow more safely. And I might actually let Elise talk about this one. This one is pretty intense. You're talking about crossing Main Street, and we also have some handouts here that have both of those projects outlined.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, it would be looking at coordinating with MDT to look at some sort of a crossing at Main Street and Jerry Lane. And I know when we were talking with Councilmember Neese, he felt like that would be a really useful crossing there. There's also some suggestions for Jerry Lane and Key City Drive in terms of kind of designing them so that they're a speed that prioritizes safety and access for children. walking. There's like a sidewalk project, which that requires public input because those are gravel roads, and so it would have to be an SID. So the neighbors have to be more involved in that than maybe a normal sidewalk project. And then potentially looking at a very short section of like some sort of protected bike facility on Lake Elmo from Meadowlark to Jerry Lane to kind of help make that connection. I'm sorry, I know it's really small over there, but as you can see, it kind of helps get kids kind of from the west side of that boundary over to the school.
Thank you, Elise. I knew you knew more about that project than I did. This is the map. This is out of the 2017 plan that shows that non-motorized connection from Aronson to Annandale through the parkland and then up through the state land under, everybody calls it kind of under the power lines up through there. And then a couple other projects we talked about that could be programmed this year. We would recommend potentially waiting at least one more year or maybe a little bit longer just due to financial constraints and or staff capacity, or in the recommendation on the second one, waiting until the recreation center is completed, which I feel that one could go either way. But the first one here to look at potentially next year is intelligent transportation systems. And these are an application that really talks to our existing software that we have on our emergency vehicles, our transit buses, those types of things that notify, whether it be like a stop sign if you're on a Met Transit corridor and you have an ITS system, it will actually talk to the signal saying, oh, a bus is coming, we need to trigger so we can keep the bus moving to keep those schedules that we have. It can do things like help us notify emergency services if there's a train. You know, don't try to take 27th, go to 13th, or go to 6th, whichever is the appropriate way to go. That is a very good project to do when you're talking about that level of corridors and intersection analysis. That is, it could be a very expensive project. We're going to need some really some good consultants that have that technology understanding of how those systems work. I'm not sure we would be able to accomplish that this year with the funding available, but we do definitely want to keep this on the radar because I think it's a benefit to not only emergency services, but making sure our Med Transit keeps running efficiently with their systems. The second one here is King Avenue East. As you're aware, if you ever go down on King Avenue East, just west of South Billings Boulevard on a Saturday, and there's a soccer game going on, there is very limited or next to none on-street parking there. People are parking up on the grass. They're parking in the neighborhoods, which is fine. That's on-street parking. But they're even parking like across where there's an irrigation ditch and there's limited parking. To look at a corridor study through here to see how we could maybe find some park share. We were interested to find out there's a little piece of park land down there that currently is being used by the implement place to store their equipment. Could that be used for parking? And then how do we get pedestrians safely across King Avenue on those days when there's a lot of traffic and people moving safely, especially when you have an irrigation ditch that's going to limit you on where you can direct people to go. Again, this is a project that could go this year. The only reason that staff would recommend waiting till the recreational center is done is just because it could change the traffic patterns or how parking may be accessible in that as a shared parking. But again, it's a project to, you know, whatever the council feel comfortable with. If you want to move forward with this, we would be happy to accommodate in any way. So this is the corridor we're talking about on King Avenue there, basically to Laurel Road, just west of South Billings Boulevard. So I will turn this over to Rusty, and then we will wrap it up and start a discussion on direction that you would like staff to take.
Okay, council, good evening. As far as transit goes, we received our allocation information in about the middle of May. We're looking at about 211,694 for that federal allocation. That'll be matched with about 52,000 in, or 53,000 in a local match. Primarily provided via that transit mill levy, generated revenue and some state sources for a total program of a little over 264,000. Much like the highway side of things, we divide ours up into work elements. As you can see there, we've got a number of them focusing at the top there, we've got administration, we've got future and current services, which we both utilize a portion of that for our planning software. TIP is always a required element that we have in there, and then coordinated human services transportation. Looking at the sources here from 25 to 26, you'll see that we do have a pretty significant dip in available funding. We had previously programmed that financial sustainability and governance study, which had been carried into FY25. So those extra funds were actually realized through the increases through the bipartisan infrastructure law, but with Helena and Bozeman coming online, we saw pretty significant decreases because those communities are now included. So we're cutting that funding 5 ways now instead of 3. So as far as our proposed planning activities for the year, we'll continue capital planning processes and updates to our asset management plans to improve prioritization. We'll also be executing a number of required NEPA, environmental analysis activities under this as well for some of the projects that we've got going, specifically for our bus stop infrastructure programs. Unfortunately, we do have to do NEPA analysis on each and every one of those locations, so that takes a little bit of work when you've got 456 of them. We are continuing work that we'd started this year on developing a plan for 15-minute connection between downtown and Stewart Park that'll serve to supplement that existing connection that we already have from the Heights, which continues to be the busiest route on our system. That'll include updates to our revenue mile and revenue hour cost models to really support that feasibility and give us an understanding of what those costs will be. We want to continue assessing improved practices for paratransit eligibility. We have seen some improvements in that with our existing tools that we utilize. However, we want to continue to expand on that to make sure that those services are appropriately apportioned to the community. We are just now kicking off that financial sustainability and governance studies, so we anticipate that there will be a number of recommendations coming out of that study that we anticipate further developing this year as well. And then we do have some required federal activities we'll be undertaking this year, including recertification of our onboard passenger counters for our passenger mile traveled recertification. That's really the number that we report to the federal government annually regarding how many passenger miles are actually traveled on the system. So to explain that better, if 5 people get on a bus and it drives 1 mile, that's 5 passenger miles we reported because we had 5 people that traveled a mile. So we just need to ensure that those, we have to audit those passenger counters on board to make sure that we're recording that data appropriately. Various other program management, and then, of course, our ongoing participation with the MPO studies and activities.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I'd like to open it up for discussion, answer questions, suggestions, project additions, deletions, however you would like to move forward. We are proposing to hopefully have this to the Policy Coordinating Committee July 22nd. We moved that meeting back a week so we could accommodate these discussions and make sure that we have adequate time to meet with you, the City Council, before we move forward. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, or we can look at any of these projects or slides you'd like to.
Well, thank you. That's a lot of information.
I know, I'm sorry. I tried to go slow too. I really tried to slow myself down because I have a tendency to go blah, blah, blah.
So I guess we'll open it up to the council, but maybe you bring up the slides that you would want us to give you direction on while we're talking, but any staff, questions for the staff? Council Member Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Laura, when we're looking at the 3 extra projects, I just want to make sure I'm understanding the Medicine Crow project correctly. It's everything that's in the yellow dotted line, right? Not just what that red box is around. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Whoever.
Yes, thank you. Yes, maybe I'll pass these out. That might be easiest. So it's coordinate with MDT. Let me take one though, so I can read off of it.
It's what was in Safe Routes to School,
right? Yeah,
so it's everything that is the yellow dotted line, right?
Within that red box, yes.
I see. Okay, so
yes.
Like the stuff over on Bitterroot, we're not talking about in this unified work plan.
Correct.
Oh, got it.
So
okay.
There's some things that are a little bit easier to accomplish from those Safe Routes to School plans. They're like stripe a crosswalk or some things like that don't necessarily need a ton of studies. So these are the ones that were pulled out where it's like we identified either we need to coordinate with MDT or we need to get more public input.
that clears it up for me. And then for these three sort of extras, do we have even a spitball sense of cost?
Okay, so for the extra three, which would be the two safe routes to school, I would propose that we would package those together into a project.
For the full project itself?
Yes, for
Okay.
all the safe routes to school ones, we would package into one project.
Okay.
And I would anticipate, we would probably need to talk to staff and engineering exactly for cost, but I'm anticipating 50-ish thousand dollars potentially to complete those evaluations.
The project itself, like the work, not the study.
Oh, the construction.
Do we have even like a ballpark?
No, I think that's what will come out of the feasibility study.
Perfect. Thank
Yep.
you.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Any other questions? Anybody? Councilmember Gulick.
So it's not part of the work plan here. Just a question and update on the Fifth Avenue corridor and just the ability to cross 27th and the railroad. I know, with Montana Rail Link being reacquired by BNSF. Can you just give an update on what's happening there?
Sure, thank you, Deputy Mayor, Council Member Gulick, Council. Yes, so the western portion of that study that engineering did is in really good shape, and we have a really good idea of what the property owners and what we can do west of 27th Street. The east side, yes, is a little bit more difficult. We ran into issues when we first started when we did the feasibility study years ago. MRL did control those tracks, and they were very willing to work with us at looking at a non-motorized connection that would directly take folks from basically downtown to the Metro. And unfortunately, when BNSF came back in and took that over, they said even if the tracks are no longer there and there's only one train that goes there a week, there's no way they would really allow us to move forward with some type of connection through that corridor in some areas because it's just so narrow when you take up the railroad right away. So I think what we're going to have to regroup on that and look at another way to get through the eastern side of that corridor to get to the Metro. And I'm not sure, I'm still working with Sarah Plath on that, on how the best way to move forward. We're still trying to have some conversations with the railroad to talk about that.
Just quick follow-up, but I know the Ellison Art Museum is spoken as interested in the trail, so at least being able to take from the west side of 27th through to like 26th maybe, and then from there laterally go whatever direction is needed to connect.
Yes, thank you. And I think that's where we need to come down and look at the places where we can accommodate some type of system through there, and then through wayfinding or potentially a different way how we can maneuver people around kind of that area where we can't be in the railroad right away.
Any other questions? Anyone? Well, we do have to have public comment on this.
Right, and
before
I
we
would
do anything.
appreciate any direction or feedback on our proposed project so we can move forward with getting our document complete and bring.
Comment, and then we'll come back and.
Thank you so much. Yep.
So this is time for public comment on this agenda item. You've heard what they've had to say, a lot of information. Does anyone would like to comment? If so, you need to come forward, give your name and address. You have 3 minutes. I don't see a lot of activity back there, so one more. Okay, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I feel like such a pest. I love hearing about the intelligent transportation services. That will really make a difference in crossing the tracks. And, the look at trying to put in an overpass, underpass was going to kill downtown. And so, but still there's that conflict of, it would be really nice when you're crossing it to know which way to route yourself. Like, oh, there's a train. Okay, I can go that way. So I'm thrilled to hear that, and I support it. Thanks.
Anyone else? Not a lot of activity back there, so we'll close the public comment, come back to the council. Yes, we do need to give you some direction. Okay. Anybody want to start? Council Member Ruspus.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to say I really appreciate the work on Colton. I think you were saying Polly, but most of that work's on Colton, right? Yeah, great. So yes, definitely that road is over wide. Would love to have that narrowed down with a diet and some protected services there, and some intersection improvements specifically at 24th. I think can really be approved. As far as kind of pushing off until maybe next year for the rec center or the King Avenue study, I think that makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't push for that in this year's budget, in this year's plan, until we really have an idea of what that impact will be. There's a lot that the groups there can work on together to try to balance their event schedule and parking demands and at the end of the day, if we could find some way to encourage us to carpool to Amen Park, it wouldn't be so bad. Right? All right, thank you.
Councilmember Gulick.
Thanks for the opportunity for input. I don't disagree with your analysis, so the two projects you propose to work for me.
Second for that. So I guess what we're hearing is that there's no objections to you following the two items that you had. One was St. Francis Catholic School and Poly Drive and Medicine Crow. Moving forward with that, is any objections to that, anyone? So is that a good enough direction to go?
I just want to make sure, are you comfortable with the three projects the MPO is proposing for the two trail feasibility studies plus the Annandale, Aronson, and the household travel survey? This will help inform us for our long-range transportation plan in 2 years.
I've seen a lot of heads nodding.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. I just want to make sure that I go in the direction you want me to.
Anything else that you need from us then?
No, this is great. I really appreciate this opportunity to have this discussion with you and to make sure that we're all on the same page moving forward.
And then next time, Rusty, you need to speak up a little bit louder. We don't hear much from you. Any other comments before we move on to item number 3? Anybody? Okay, then we'll move on to item number 3. Thank you. And I noticed that Kevin's not here to talk about this one, so I guess, are we stuck with Chris tonight then?
All right. So my understanding is that the request last week was to put this on the agenda. I think the conversation maybe took place at Budget and Finance. And so that's why you see it here. From a staff perspective, this is really what I see this as is a political policy conversation as to whether you're looking this evening to provide the public with an opportunity to be heard, yourselves to make public comment, or ultimately do you end up wanting to write a political letter or some motivated to make a request to Northwestern Energy? But from a staff perspective, we don't have anything to add to it. Yes, we would anticipate there are fiscal financial impacts to utilities, but I don't think that's really the discussion tonight from what I understand.
So I guess we'll open up to Councilmember Gulick.
Chris, in our Budget and Finance Committee meeting, we did hear from staff in terms of what some of the departments would be facing with that proposed increase. I seem to recall $850,000 from Public Works, our water treatment in particular, but also our wastewater are very large energy users. And then from among other departments, there was polling or examination of what their usage was as well. So we were looking at amongst all of them about $1 million a year. Is that consistent with your recollection or
Unfortunately, I don't have that data and haven't seen wherever those numbers came from.
Did you want to finish? Or are you done?
Just got
Councilmember
something to add to that. So I followed up with Director Melling and then Finance Director Zeller. I think that number is actually higher now, based on the analysis that Andy did this afternoon. When you add in parks or street light districts, streetlight districts alone were $300,000 an increase, and then on top of the 850,000 in water and sewer. And then there was about, with parks, I think there was 125,000 or so in parks, plus our ops centers and buildings. So that number is going to exceed, 1.25, closer to 1.5 million across the system in cost increase over, based on that 17% increase. So it's higher than even what was discussed last week.
Any other one? Councilmember Neese.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to find out, what the root cause is. I know businesses have to invest in infrastructure. There's huge demand for electricity, and it's getting more and more every day. And so, what is the cost? I'm assuming, these are highly regulated rates, and so they have to recover their cost, their investment. Just like we built a water plant, $140 million water plant, and we had to increase the rates on everyone across the board. Now the Heights didn't get that until recently. Now we're going to get huge increases because, way our contract works up in the Heights. And so those are the kind of things that, I'd like to understand a little bit more about this. Is this just all corporate profit, or is this investing in the system to provide energy and electricity down the road? That's something I don't know, and I'm assuming the government entity that hears this is going to understand that better than any of us here would, and make sure that that's doing that. And so if we talk about right now, what we kind of know, we don't know a lot about this, but if it's 1.5 million to the city, of course, the city doesn't pay that, the taxpayers do. And so what does 1.5 million equate to a normal taxpayer in an average medium home? That's what I'd like to know, is see what amount is that really doing? Is this increase, again, is it just because of what the state did with the property, shifting the property tax from residential to commercial? If it's not that, then it has to be an investment of some sort. So anyway, if anyone, Chris, sure, if you can answer some of that, or Chris, you can get some information on what 1.5 million is going to impact the average householder, I think that'd be good information.
So Councilmember Asperleiter and Councilman Kennedy.
So this docket was prepared and presented. It got put on the docket with the PSC before the tax shift in those legislative bills. So this does not even anticipate the tax increase that Northwestern is going to see, which means you're likely to see another docket come before to address that issue separately next year or later this year. Yet, once they figure out what that tax burden is come August and November. This docket specifically, in my review of the summary documents, is to add additional generation capacity and account for recover costs associated with the Yellowstone generation facility in Laurel, and start planning for additional generation capacity. So nothing to do with the tax implications that are coming. That you can rest assured that's going to be another docket coming down the line. This is specifically in the docket for recovering costs from the Yellowstone facility and planning for additional generation capacity. So this one in particular, as for how it relates to the city of Billings, we're not going to hold water and sewer rates flat for second year, and we're not even going to be able to hold what we proposed in year 2 of our rate setting. Those, you can rest assured, are going to go up now to try to accommodate that $800,000 utility bill increase for water and wastewater. So that's coming, and instantaneously, those street light districts and are going to see that $300,000 increase on their tax bills immediately. So these are changes that are going to get chewed up in the rate base. The ops center costs are going to come out of the general fund, as will the impact on parks. That'll come out of parks operation and maintenance, which, as we all have discussed ad nauseum for 2 years, we're not funding fully anyway. So these are all things that are going to hit the ratepayer immediately and are going to hit some of these general fund sources in the next fiscal year. So as it relates to what impact it has on us, that happens quickly. I think the other perspective from me is adding an increasing generation capacity and what they're specifically targeting, if you read the docket and in my conversations with their government affairs folks, are large data centers, large industrial users, and trying to attract those folks into Montana and into their rate base. The problem for Billings is none of those users ever even actually hit our tax base. Those are all projects that in all likelihood are going to get developed outside of the city limits. They're going to be county taxpayers. They're not going to be city taxpayers, and they're going to add zero revenue to our tax base. So from a city perspective, we stand zero to gain and only things to lose here. And that's my perspective with this docket as it's presented right now. And that's not even projecting what's going to come once they get the reallocation of the tax shift that happened in the legislature. So this is the first of a second one you can count on coming within the next 12 months. And that one's probably more justifiable based on the tax implications than this one, which is arguable, I would say. You know, being able to recover what they have to pay in taxes is certainly a justifiable cost that will get turned around and passed back on, which is exactly what they told the legislature and the governor was going to happen when they did it. This one, I think, is the arguable one. The next one, there's no way the PSC can probably deny that. So my perspective is I think we should have a serious conversation about sending a letter opposing the rate increase from the city of Billings and the elected body as a record on the docket. I mean, the hearing's already been had, but there's a 30-day comment period, I believe, that I think it's our duty to at least inform the PSC that the impact that this is going to have on us and the crunch that it's going to have on our residents.
Councilmember Kennedy, you were next.
Very well said, Councilman Aspenlinder. The whole piece of this and our talking at the budget hearing was to send a letter forward to Northwest Energy and letting them know exactly why we object to the rates going up and how it will affect our ratepayers, our residents here, and making sure it's a part of the total record, because that's and then the Public Service Commission will weigh all of that, decide how they want to go. But I really do feel we need to weigh in on it too, on for the people in our city.
Councilmember Neese.
Thank you. I was just going to ask Scott, so if you're going to address a letter to the PSC, I mean, they're asking for recovering their costs for the building, the plant, whether it's Laurel and other things like that. So, and since the belief is that may be needed, but it's not going to help our county, our community here, how would you ask the PSC to make a change to the rates so that Billings is not impacted, but those who are the users of that are impacted? Or are you suggesting that they just don't, the Northwest Energy just eat that cost of all the development?
In the private sector, you would eat the cost of development and recover it on the rates to the users that are going to use that power. The city of Billings, I mean, you can make the argument that the increased capacity generation for new growth benefits, you ratepayer X in the Heights and me ratepayer Y on the West End. But I think that's a really, really hard argument to make to recover costs on generation facilities that weren't necessary, but were built for excess capacity and built for wholesale and retail sales.
Right.
So I think that's the argument that these costs should not be borne by the ratepayer because they're investments for future sales that should be covered. They should be borne by Northwestern Energy out of their own investments, not recovered off of the ratepayer back. That would be my argument.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Gulick. And remember, we have public comment coming.
Yes, okay, thank you. Northwestern Energy is going to charge as high a rates as they possibly can. They're going to try to push much risk onto ratepayers as they're allowed to. They're a monopoly. It's in their interest to do that. It's the PSC, the Public Service Commission, that is charged with ensuring that the public interest is served. In the absence of hearing from the public, from entities like the city of Billings, I think you get what's called regulatory capture. You only hear from Northwestern Energy. You don't hear from anyone else. You start to just sort of do their bidding. And so I think it's a really important duty for us is to make sure they understand what kind of impacts we would be facing. So I think it'd be really good for us, really important for us to weigh in.
And if I may, Deputy Mayor, I think Councilman Gulick is right in that, and Tony can nod his head, having been a former commissioner. I don't know that there's been a municipality that's ever weighed in on one of these things in their formal capacity. I don't think there ever really has been. And so this will be, I presume this will be, a head turner. And it'll be a head turner in part to Northwestern Energy as well, I think. And I think it is our job to also do exactly what Ed said. I mean, we have to raise our hand and say, whoa. You're impacting two ways the ratepayers of Billings. You're impacting them on their bill, but they're going to get it double based on the costs that get fed back to them through our municipal services as well. So this is a double hit in a rate increase like this. And if it's justifiable, like an increase or the tax shift that was passed, that's one thing. This is something wholly and separately different than that. And I think this is where it is appropriate for us to raise our hand and say, hang on a second. We're urging you to take a look at whether all of this or a fraction of this is actually recoverable. Maybe it is a fraction, but that's the PSC's job. And that's what we should be urging the PSC to do.
Councilmember Rupsis, Councilmember Owen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think when we talked the other day, we were asking for some direction or some insight into what the Montana League of Cities and Towns might be saying. Chris, have we heard anything on that? Can you have information? All right, well, sounds like.
Yes, I don't have it. The mayor sent it to us by email. It was the league's recommendation was that we stay out of it for fear that the legislature would come after us. I'm dubious that is a thing. I think the particular bills that were referenced had were a completely separate issue that have nothing to do with this. So I don't know that I think that's the risk that it was portrayed to be from my personal perspective.
Yeah.
That's all I had was the mayor's email.
And I would only add to that I think the league's concern is that the PSC may start taking action to try to rope in municipal rate setting. So garbage, water, and sewer rates that we charge and we set, that the PSC may want to pull that under their umbrella. And to that, I would say, fine, go for it. I mean, like our process is pretty standard, pretty straightforward. I mean, we're not talking about 20, 30, 40% increases. We're 3, 4, you know, I have no fear. I mean, it'll add an extra step and an extra hurdle in the process, but for the city of Billings and the way we do it, I would have zero fear of the PSC jumping in the middle of that outside of having another regulatory arm in the midst of that process. But that's that's a legislative step that would have to happen. And I can't imagine that the legislature would look to expand the authority of the PSC to municipal rate setting.
Let's open it up for public comment at this point, and then we'll come back, okay?
Okay.
Public comment, anyone? 3 minutes, give your name and address. Tell me what you think.
Tony O'Donnell, 3958 South Tanager. Well, having been pointed out my experience on the Public Service Commission, I would point out one thing, Scott, you're exactly right. This tax shift is that property taxes by state law are at the absolute pass-through. The utility is required to pass all of that on and to pay none of it. In terms of several points, good points were made. First of all, I think it would be very poor for the council to take a position without having the facts of the case. And that's, the hearings go on for 2 weeks, and there are a lot of questions asked and answered that are very, very pertinent to the case. One of the things that the general public doesn't really understand too well is that the Public Service Commission doesn't do things because they want to. Because I would very, very much like to have voted no on rate increases. But we are constrained by federal and state law. Northwestern has a monopoly on electricity, okay? In return for that, they have to give a guarantee to the people of the state of Montana, in this case, in their service territory, to provide all the electricity that is needed. That's a very heavy responsibility. As you know, when it gets to be 45 degrees below zero for a week at a time in Montana, Northwestern Energy does not have the power to keep people warm. That's existential, because keeping people warm means keeping people alive. 200 years ago, 150 years ago, when it got to be 60 degrees below zero, 98% of the cows in Montana died, but no people died because every house had a fireplace. It's not the same thing now. We're dependent upon a centralized gas or electricity system, and even the gas system is reliant upon electricity. So say federal and state laws. People talk about the profitability of the utility. The Public Service Commission does not guarantee the profitability. However, we do have to guarantee that they're in a position to be competitive. Federal and state law, Hope and Bloomfield court cases, prescribe that the utility must be in a position, rate-wise, to compete with other investments of the same risk category, or basically other utilities. They have to be able to be attractive to money on the whole thing. If their rates are significantly lower, if the rate of return is slower, then that violates federal law because they can't attract capital and those things. It's a very, very complicated system. That's why it takes a tremendous amount of staff study on the whole thing. I quite agree. There is no appetite whatever among the staff. I can't speak for any of the commissioners now since I'm not there, but no appetite whatever for expanding the scope of the regulatory powers of the Public Service Commission to anything else other than what they have. Our staff is very, very low on the whole thing. A very interesting point, I forget, it was Ed or Scott who made mention of it, whether or not some of the investments need to be made by ratepayers, be paid for by ratepayers or by shareholders. That's been of great concern to me over the last several years, and I think that does need to be. But for this body to recommend that the rates not be increased, I think it goes beyond the ability of the Public Service Commission to say yes or no to something. If the utility spends money and if it's prudent, the Public Service Commission must approve it. That's federal and state law. So it's good, as somebody pointed out, to say what the position, what the impact on the city would be. That's very, very good. That's like all the other people who are testifying right now. But the utility has, in order to fulfill their mandate of providing all the electricity that we need, they have to make those investments. So it's a very, very complicated thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Anyone else like to speak on Northwest Energy rate increase? Anyone else? If you've spoken once on it, you can't speak again.
Okay, the rule said, oh, sorry. Anyway, okay, Chris Glenn. I want to say that I feel like the decisions that Northwestern Energy has been making is that they are choosing to build electrical generation that is going to bring them the most profit, and that there are other options that they're not choosing, and that, I mean, they're a business. They're meant to make profit. I get that, and I support that. But at the same time, we have to buy their product. We can't use the market to say it's too expensive. Well, I got solar, but they're opposing solar as well. So I want to say that I really don't believe them that they are justified in asking for this cost. I would love to see the facts. I'm an engineer. I'd like to see the facts, but I personally don't. From what I've heard and read, they don't have the justification for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? We'll close the public comment, come back to council. Councilmember Owen.
Thanks. I just had a question and then a comment. Does anyone know for certain how long the comment period's open? Because when I asked Gina beforehand, she was under the impression it closed Friday, but did not feel certain about it. So I'm curious if anybody knows for certain how long we might have, and also what format this might take. Because when I look at the docket, they are very technical filings, and I don't think we want to do that. So do we think this has to be oral? Is this just a letter we send to the commissioners and they distribute it and file it in the docket if it's appropriate? Like, what, does anyone know formally what we have to do? Can we let Tony answer?
Tony, come back for a minute, since you're the expert here.
Not an expert, but just like this committee, the state law requires public comment before every meeting. So even though any formal comment period on a particular docket item might be over and past, there's always opportunity before every public meeting of the commission for public comment. So it
will end Friday when they end their meetings on this rate case. Is that right?
But the staff will still be okay. It's a matter of record, okay, as attorney. So the point is that it can't be taken into account as a fact on the case on the record, okay, unless it's done within that comment period. But the city just explaining its position and the effect is not anything that's going to be germane to a decision on the whole thing. The staff has, after this is over, will take an extensive period of time. There's like 270 days that the commission has to reach a decision. So there'll be a lot of staff work on this thing, and the commissioners will still be making up their minds. So it might be timely to do it in that period of time, but it's not necessary, in my opinion.
So what it sounds like is we could make a comment of what the effect is of what's happening to Billings. That sounds like reasonable.
I think we can state the position, but if we're going to do a letter, I would also do one that says our constituents are calling us. I am getting a ton of calls. I think it's okay to say we are hearing loudly from the community that they're deeply concerned about this.
So who do we have the budget committee make a letter for us to look at, or do we make, or Councilman Espenlater? Okay. So everybody, Councilman Gulick, Councilman Espenlater.
I'm pretty fluent in a-hole these days, so I might not be the right one. I'll take a stab at a draft and float it out to the budget and finance committee to start. Is that appropriate? And then it can go from there up to the full council. Is that?
Thumbs up? Okay. Councilman Esperleiter, you've been chosen. Thank you. So anything else on item number 3, Councilmember Kennedy? Okay. So we'll close number 3 and we'll go to Chris, highlights of upcoming agenda items.
Well, you've got a pretty robust agenda for next Monday night, right? It's budget adoption night. It is preliminary budget, but it is very important. I mean, we know for the first time there are no revenue changes that are going to happen between now and final budget adoption. But so we work pretty diligently to keep that agenda focused on budget items, and yet there are, because I went through them today, reviewing and approving a number of land use decisions that needed to stay in the timeline process statutorily. So you got a pretty lengthy agenda for 1 week from tonight. And then I did just add our clerk's office to add, Mr. Kennedy had a couple of initiatives that he would like you to consider. So I asked them to put them on that, identify them on that agenda for you and the public. So that's what I've got.
Council discussion. Any council discussion? Okay. Public comment on non-agenda items. This is a chance to talk about anything you want. Anybody in the audience? Anybody? I don't see any. So guess what, folks? We're adjourned. Thank you for coming tonight, everyone.